I came downstairs 2 days after my father's funeral and found my uncle going through his drawers while my aunt sorted through his clothes in the bedroom where he died. "Sorry, sweetheart," my uncle said when he saw me. "There's nothing left for you. Your father was broke, just debts and an old house." What they didn't know was that I'd been watching my father count stacks of cash in the basement every Sunday night since I was 9 years old, and I'd kept that secret for 17 years. Before I tell you what my father's siblings did next, and how I made sure every single one of them got exactly what they deserved, it really helps to know that someone out there is listening. So if this is resonating with you in any way, or if it simply caught your attention, please let me know in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, or just say hello. There's something incredibly comforting about knowing I'm not alone in this. Thanks a lot. Now, back to the story. My father counted money in the basement every Sunday at 11 p.m. He thought I didn't know. I was 9 the first time I saw him. Couldn't sleep, came downstairs for water and heard something through the floor. Not loud, just this quiet, rhythmic sound, paper on paper. I stood at the top of the basement stairs with my hand on the railing, listening. The door wasn't locked. I pushed it open an inch and looked down. He was sitting at his old workbench under a single bulb, and on the surface in front of him were stacks. Neat, rubber-banded stacks of cash. He was counting them the way you'd count anything, systematically, quietly, his lips barely moving. When he finished one stack, he wrote something in a notebook, then moved to the next. I went back to bed, never said a word. For the next 17 years, I never said a word. Every Sunday, same ritual. I'd hear him go down. Sometimes I'd wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and hear him coming back up, the basement door clicking shut, his footsteps passing my room. I don't know how much money was down there. I don't know where it went between Sundays. I just knew that my father, who wore the same 3 flannel shirts and drove a rusted Buick and worked as a part-time handyman around town, had more money than anyone in our family ever suspected. And I knew, even as a kid, that I wasn't supposed to know. So I kept quiet. My whole life I kept quiet. My father was the youngest of 5. His siblings, Jerry, Frank, Donna, and Carol, had been born in quick succession in the 1950s, and then there was a gap. My grandmother used to say Harold was her surprise. I think what she meant was that by the time he came along, she was tired. She loved him, but she was tired. And his siblings were already teenagers, already formed into the people they'd become, grabbers. That's the only word for it. They grabbed. Uncle Jerry was the worst. He was the oldest, which he seemed to think gave him some kind of authority over everyone else. He had opinions about everything. How my grandmother should manage her money, how my father should live his life, where Thanksgiving should be held and what should be served. But opinions were the harmless part. The harmful part was the borrowing. Jerry borrowed money the way other people breathe. He borrowed from my grandmother until she died, then he borrowed from my father. He borrowed for business ideas that never materialized, for medical bills he definitely had insurance for his daughter's wedding, for his son's truck. He borrowed with the understanding that repayment was theoretical, a polite fiction they both pretended to believe. My father never said no. When I was 12, I asked him about it once. We were driving home from Jerry's house after a Sunday dinner where Jerry had pulled Dad aside in the kitchen, voice low, while the rest of us ate pie. I saw the transaction, saw my father take out his wallet. "Dad," I said, "why do you keep giving Uncle Jerry money?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because he's my brother." "But he never pays you back." "I know. Doesn't that make you angry?" He looked at me in the rear-view mirror. I was in the back seat because I always sat in the back seat, even when it was just us. He had these pale blue eyes, my father, watery, sad in a way that had nothing to do with whatever was happening at the moment. "Anger's expensive," he said. "Can't afford it." I didn't understand then. I do now. The borrowing wasn't limited to Jerry. Frank borrowed less frequently but in larger amounts, always with some investment opportunity attached, some friend of a friend who knew a guy. Donna borrowed for her kids, always her kids, their braces and their sports fees and their college applications. Carol borrowed the most creatively, never asking outright, just arranging situations where my father had no choice. Her car would break down 2 states away, and who else was she going to call? Her furnace would die in January, and what was she supposed to do, freeze? My father helped everyone. He fixed Carol's furnace himself, drove 6 hours to pick up Donna's son from a college party gone wrong, costing Frank's mortgage when the bank got nervous. He was the family resource, the fallback, the one who'd never say no. And they let him live in that falling-down house on Maple Street. They let him drive that terrible car. They watched him wear those same 3 shirts year after year, and they told themselves he was just frugal, just modest, just Dad's weird little brother who never wanted much. They never wondered where the money came from. I did, but I never asked. My mother left when I was 7, just walked out one morning and didn't come back. I have only a few memories of her, the smell of her hairspray, the sound of her laugh rare, the way she'd tap her fingernails on the table when she was annoyed. She wasn't cruel. She was just absent even when she was present, and eventually she made it official. My father raised me alone after that. He cooked dinner every night, nothing fancy, just functional. Pasta, chicken, vegetables from the garden. He helped with homework when I asked, though I stopped asking around 7th grade when the math got harder than he could handle. He came to my school plays and sat in the back row, clapping louder than anyone. He never dated again, never seemed to want to. His life was small by design, work, home, me, those Sunday nights in the basement. And the family, demanding and taking and never giving anything back. I grew up angry on his behalf. I grew up watching him let people use him, and I'd lie in bed at night thinking of all the things I wanted to say to Uncle Jerry, to Aunt Carol, to all of them. But I was a kid, and then I was a teenager, and then I was a young woman trying to build my own life, and somehow the words never came out. Because my father didn't want them to, I could feel it. He wanted peace more than he wanted justice, and he was willing to pay for it. So I stayed quiet, just like always. I moved away at 22. Got a job in Columbus doing administrative work for a property management company, nothing glamorous, but steady. I had my own apartment, my own life. I drove back to see my father every few weeks, more if I could manage it. He never asked me to. He just looked happy when I showed up, and he looked a little sad when I left, and that was the full range of emotions he allowed himself to show. The siblings had scattered by then, too. Jerry was in Pittsburgh with his second wife. Frank had moved to Florida, chasing whatever scheme he was chasing that year. Donna and Carol stayed closer, both within a few hours of the old house, but their visits to my father were perfunctory at best. They came when they needed something. They called when they needed money. Otherwise, he might as well not have existed. I always noticed. When I was 29, my father got sick. It started with a cough that wouldn't go away, then fatigue, then weight loss. By the time he finally went to the doctor, I had to drive out and basically drag him there. The cancer had spread to his lymph nodes. "How long have you been feeling like this?" the oncologist asked, studying the scans. My father shrugged. "Few months." "Dad," I said, "you told me a few weeks." He didn't answer. The diagnosis was bad but not hopeless. Treatment was possible. Chemo, radiation, the whole gauntlet. My father sat through the explanation with that same calm expression he had for everything. When the doctor finished, he asked if my father had any questions. "Will it hurt?" he asked. The doctor paused. "There's discomfort associated with treatment, yes, but we can manage." "I meant dying," my father said. "Will dying hurt?" The room went quiet. I felt something crack open in my chest, something I'd been holding together for a long time. "Dad," I said, "you're not." "I just want to know," he said, still calm, still quiet. "That's all, I just want to know what I'm looking at." He did the treatment. 3 rounds of chemo, weeks of radiation, all of it. I moved back home temporarily. Temporarily, that stretched into months. I took a leave from my job, then quit entirely when it became clear I wasn't going back anytime soon. I handled his appointments, his medications, his meals. I cleaned the house, managed the bills, fielded calls from his siblings. Those calls were something. Jerry called once in the first 3 months. Once. He said he was sorry to hear about the diagnosis, asked if there was anything he could do, which was rhetorical, obviously, and then got around to the real point. He'd been thinking about the house, Dad's house, the one on Maple Street. "It's an asset," Jerry said, as if he were educating me. "Property's worth something these days, and with Dad's medical bills, I figure." "Figure what?" I asked. "Well, someone's going to have to think practically, when the time comes." "He's not dead, Uncle Jerry." "I know that, sweetheart. I'm just saying, planning ahead." "He's in the next room. He's eating soup. He's alive." Jerry sighed like I was being difficult. "Just something to keep in mind," he said and hung up. That was 3 months in. After that, he didn't call at all. The others weren't much better. Frank sent a card, one of those generic Hallmark things with a printed message about strength and faith. No personal note. Carol came by exactly once, stayed for 45 minutes and spent most of it complaining about her hip. Donna called to check in periodically, but her calls were short, distracted. She had her own kids, her own problems. Dad's dying was inconvenient for everyone. I handled it alone. The night before he died, my father asked me to bring him the shoebox from the top of his closet. I knew the one, old Florsheim box, lid held on with a rubber band. I'd seen it there my whole life but never opened it. He took it from me with shaking hands and set it on his lap. "There's a man," he said. "Name's Mike Castellano. When I'm gone, I want you to find him." "Who is he?" "Someone from before." He pulled a photograph from the box, 2 young men in front of a casino sign, grinning like they own the world. One of them was my father, decades younger, unrecognizable except for those pale blue eyes. "We worked together, a long time ago." "Worked how?" He handed me a card with a phone number written on it in faded ink. "Call him, he'll explain." He took my hand. "The money you saw me counting all those years, it's real and it's yours. But you'll need help getting to it. Mike knows where everything is." "Dad, I don't understand." "You will." He squeezed my hand weakly. "I kept you out of it to protect you, but now—" He coughed, that terrible rattling cough. "Now you need to know, and you need to be careful. Your aunts and uncles, they think I'm broke. Let them keep thinking it. Promise me." "I promise." He died the next morning, just before dawn. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Small service, just family and a few neighbors. His siblings came, all of them, Jerry from Pittsburgh, Frank from Florida, Donna and Carol from their respective towns. They wore black. They looked appropriately solemn. They shook hands with the pastor and thanked the funeral director and told me how sorry they were. By Thursday, they were going through his closets. I came downstairs that morning and found Jerry and Frank in the living room, pulling books off shelves and looking through drawers. Donna was in the kitchen, opening cabinets. Carol was in the bedroom, my father's bedroom, where he'd died, sorting through his clothes. "What are you doing?" I asked. Jerry looked up. He had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. "Just seeing what's here, sweetheart, taking stock." "Taking stock?" "Your father didn't have a will. Did you know that?" He shook his head, like this was my fault somehow. "No will, no clear instructions. Which means the estate goes to probate, which means we've got to figure out what we're dealing with. His body isn't even in the ground yet. The funeral was 2 days ago. He's buried." Jerry straightened up. "Look, I know this is hard, but someone's got to be practical, and since I'm the oldest—" "Since you're the oldest, what? You get to pick through his stuff like vultures." "That's not fair." "Get out." They all stopped what they were doing. Donna appeared in the kitchen doorway. Carol came out of the bedroom holding one of my father's shirts. "Sweetheart," Jerry said, voice going soft like he was talking to a child. "We're family, we're trying to help." "Help with what? You didn't help when he was sick. You didn't visit, you didn't call. Now he's gone and suddenly you're interested. You borrowed money from him for 30 years. Never paid it back, any of you." I looked at each of them in turn. "He gave and gave and gave, and you just took. And now you're here the second he's gone, taking more." Carol had the nerve to look offended. "He was my brother. I have a right." "You have nothing." My voice was shaking. "Get out, all of you, now." They left, not gracefully. There was muttering, there were pointed looks. There was Jerry saying something about talking when she's calmed down. But they left. I stood alone in my father's living room, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like staying quiet. That night, I called the number on the card. Mike Castellano answered on the third ring. His voice was rough, cautious. "Who's this?" "Harold Brennan's daughter. He told me to call you." A long pause. "Hal's gone." "Yesterday." Another pause. I could hear him breathing. Then, "Where are you?" "His house, on Maple Street." "Stay there, I'm coming." He hung up before I could ask anything else. Mike arrived the next afternoon. He was in his late 60s, tall, lean, silver hair slicked back, wearing a leather jacket that was too nice for our neighborhood. He had sharp eyes and an expression I couldn't read. "You're Rachel," he said, not a question. "How do you know my name?" "Your father talked about you." He looked past me into the house. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked through the living room slowly, touching things. The bookshelf, the window frame, the back of my father's chair. Like he was remembering something. "He really kept it like this," Mike said. "All these years, same furniture, same curtains." He shook his head. "Stubborn bastard." "You knew him well." "Better than anyone." He turned to face me. "Did he tell you what we used to do?" "He said you worked together. Cards." "Cards." Mike laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's one way to put it." He sat down heavily in my father's chair. "Your old man was the best card counter I ever saw. We worked the circuit together for 15 years. Vegas, Reno, Atlantic City, before the casinos got smart, before they started sharing information." I sat across from him. "The money in the basement." He nodded. "He told you about that." "He didn't tell me anything. I saw him counting it when I was 9. Mike studied me. "You kept that quiet for 20 years. "I kept a lot of things quiet." "Yeah," he rubbed his jaw. "He said you would, said you were like him that way." He leaned forward. "Look, here's the situation. Your father had money, real money, not the pocket change his family borrowed off him. But it's not in regular accounts. It's scattered. Cash, safety deposit boxes, some offshore stuff I helped him set up in the 90s. Getting to it isn't simple." "Why not?" "Because your father was careful. Paranoid, even. He built walls around everything. Passwords, conditions, verification procedures. Some of it I can help you access, some of it." He spread his hands. "Only he knew." "So what do we do?" Mike smiled, and for the first time I saw something of the young man in that photograph. "We start at the beginning, and we deal with your relatives before they become a problem." "They're already a problem." "Then we deal with them first." Over the next 3 days, Mike told me about my father's other life. They'd met in 1979 at a blackjack table in Reno. My father was 23, fresh out of nowhere, and he could track cards like nobody Mike had ever seen. Natural gift, Mike called it, a brain that worked in numbers. They'd teamed up, my father counting, Mike handling the logistics. Where to play, how long to stay, when to walk away. They'd made a fortune together, moving from casino to casino, staying one step ahead of security and pit bosses and the people who got paid to catch people like them. "We weren't cheating," Mike said. "That's the thing people don't understand. Counting isn't illegal, it's just math, but the casinos don't like it and they don't have to let you play." By 1985, they were banned from most of the major casinos. They tried disguises, fake IDs, working through other players. Sometimes it worked. Eventually, it didn't. "Your father wanted out by then anyway," Mike said. "He'd met your mother, wanted a normal life, so he took his stake and came back here, and I went my own way." "You stayed in touch." "Off and on, less after you were born." Mike looked away. "He wanted to keep that world away from you. I respected it." "But the money." "The money was always there. He just pretended it wasn't." Mike stood up and walked to the window. "Your father was brilliant at disappearing, making people see what he wanted them to see. His siblings thought he was a handyman who couldn't rub 2 nickels together. That's what he wanted them to think." "Why?" "Because if they knew the truth, they'd never leave him alone." He turned back to me. "They took enough as it was. Imagine if they knew what he really had." Jerry called again the following week. He'd thought things over and wanted to discuss the estate properly. No hard feelings about how I'd reacted. Grief does strange things to people, he understood. What he actually wanted was another look at the house. There might be things we missed, he said. Old accounts, insurance policies, Dad wasn't always organized. There's nothing here, I said. You don't know that. I've been through everything. Have you checked the basement? I felt cold. The basement. Frank thinks there might be a safe or something down there. Dad was always going down there, remember? All those Sunday nights. They knew. They didn't know what they knew, but they sensed something. There's no safe, I said. Just his workbench and tools. Well, we should check anyway. Family meeting this weekend, all of us. We'll go through everything together. He hung up before I could refuse. They're going to keep coming, I told Mike that night. They won't stop until they find something. Then we give them something to find. I looked at him. Not the real money, he said. Something else, something that makes them think they've won. He smiled. Your father used to call it the dummy pot. In poker, when you want to keep someone in the game, you let them win a little. Makes them confident, makes them stay. I don't want them to stay. I want them gone. And they will be, once they think there's nothing left to take. He leaned forward. Here's what we're going to do. The plan was simple. My father had kept records, meticulous records, of every dollar he'd ever given his siblings. Every loan that was never repaid. Every time Jerry borrowed money for one of his schemes. Every time Carol needed help that was never reciprocated. We make them think they already got their inheritance, Mike said. All those years of borrowing, that was their share. We put it in writing, we make them acknowledge it, and we let them think the cupboard's bare. They won't believe it. They will if we give them something to take. He gestured around the room. This furniture, the car, whatever junk's in the attic, let them haul it away. Let them sign papers saying they received it, make it official. And then they have no legal claim to anything else, because they already got theirs, and they put their names on documents proving it. I thought about it. That's your father's idea. He talked about it before he got sick. Mike's eyes were steady. He knew what they'd do when he was gone. He wanted you ready. The family meeting happened that Saturday. Jerry, Frank, Donna, Carol, all of them gathered in my father's living room, looking at me with expressions of concern that didn't reach their eyes. We're all worried about you, Donna said, handling this alone. I'm not alone. I nodded toward Mike, who stood by the window in his expensive jacket. This is my father's attorney. Jerry's eyes narrowed. Since when did Dad have an attorney? Since he needed one. Mike stepped forward, all business now. Harold Brennan engaged me several years ago to manage certain aspects of his affairs. Estate planning, asset protection, standard arrangements. I never heard about any of this, Carol said. You weren't meant to. Mike opened a folder he'd been holding. Your brother was a private man. He wanted his affairs handled quietly. He handed out sheets of paper, one to each sibling. I watched their faces as they read. Jerry looked up first. What is this? A summary of loans made by your brother over the past 30 years. To you, to your siblings, to various family members. Mike's voice was flat, professional. Total amounts, dates, occasions. Your individual total is at the bottom. These weren't loans, Frank sputtered. These were gifts, charity. Mike raised an eyebrow. There are letters, emails, signed acknowledgments. Your brother kept everything. They were all looking at each other now. Carol had gone pale. Donna was staring at her paper like it might bite her. The estate, Mike continued, after debts and obligations is worth approximately $43,000. That's the house, the vehicle, and personal effects. That can't be right, Jerry said. I assure you it is. Your brother lived modestly. He gave generously. There's very little left. Mike paused. However, given the amounts he distributed to family over the years, a reasonable person might conclude that some of you have already received more than your fair share. The room erupted. I sat back and let them argue. Jerry accused Donna of taking more than she'd reported. Carol brought up Frank's failed business deals. They pointed fingers, raised voices, dredged up decades of resentment I hadn't even known existed. Through it all, Mike remained calm. He let them exhaust themselves, and when they finally quieted down, he presented the solution. "There's furniture here," he said. "Appliances, tools, various household items. Rachel has agreed to distribute these among you in exchange for a signed acknowledgement that you've received your portion of the estate." "What kind of acknowledgement?" Jerry asked, suspicious. "A simple document stating what you've taken and its estimated value. Standard probate procedure." They signed. One by one, they signed. And then they started loading things into their cars: my father's couch, his kitchen table, his television. They took tools from the garage and dishes from the cabinets and curtains from the windows. By evening, the house was stripped bare, and I had 4 signed documents, properly witnessed, stating that Jerry, Frank, Donna, and Carol Brennan had each received their full share of their brother's estate. They drove away thinking they'd won. They had no idea. Mike stayed to help me clean up. "That went well," he said, sweeping dust from the bare floor. "They took everything. They took furniture, junk." He leaned on the broom. "The real money is still sitting exactly where your father left it." I looked at him. In the harsh overhead light, he looked older, more tired. "Mike, how much money are we actually talking about?" He didn't answer for a while. Then he said, "More than you think." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I'm going to give you right now." He set down the broom. "Your father and I had an arrangement. 20% of anything we recovered together would go to me. That was the deal, going back decades. You want a cut. I want what I'm owed." His voice was even, but there was an edge underneath. "I helped your father build this. I helped him hide it. I kept my mouth shut for 30 years. I think that's worth something. And if I don't agree, then we have a problem." He picked up his jacket from where it hung on a doorknob. "But I don't think we're going to have a problem. Are we, Rachel?" I watched him put on his jacket, straighten his collar. He was taller than me, stronger. He knew things I didn't. "No," I said, "we're not." "Good." He headed for the door. "I'll be in touch about the next steps. Get some sleep." After he left, I stood alone in the empty house, listening to the silence. My father had trusted Mike, or he'd used him, or both. I couldn't tell anymore where one ended and the other began. But I knew one thing: Mike wanted more than 20%. I could feel it in the way he talked, the way he watched me. He was waiting for something, positioning himself. My father had left me money and secrets and complications, and now I had to figure out which was which. The next several weeks were strange. Mike came and went, always with new information: a safety deposit box in Cincinnati, an account number scrawled on a piece of paper hidden in a hollowed-out book. Each time he found something, he documented it carefully. Each time I noticed him calculating. Meanwhile, my relatives continued to call. Jerry wanted to know if I'd found any insurance policies. Carol wondered if there might be a storage unit somewhere. They were still digging, still unsatisfied with what they'd taken. I kept my answers vague. No insurance, no storage unit, nothing left. But Jerry was persistent in a way that made me nervous. "That attorney of yours," he said during one call. "What's his name? I want to verify some things." "Mike Castellano." "Right, what firm is he with?" I gave him a name, something generic, something Mike had suggested. After we hung up, I sat there wondering if that would hold. It didn't. 2 weeks later, Jerry called back. His voice was different, tight. "I looked him up," he said. "Your attorney. And there's no Mike Castellano registered with the state bar. No record of him at that firm you mentioned. No record of him anywhere." A pause. "I called around, asked some people. They said he's a known associate of gamblers and card cheats going back to the 80s. I didn't say anything. Who is he really, Rachel? What's going on here?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. I think you know exactly what's happening, and I think you're trying to cut us out of something." His voice went hard. "I'm coming back out there this weekend, and I'm bringing my own lawyer." He hung up. I called Mike immediately. "We have a problem," I said. I was sitting in a diner outside of town. Mike's suggestion, somewhere nobody would recognize us. He sat across from me, stirring his coffee with exaggerated calm. "Jerry's been making calls. He knows you're not a real lawyer." "I never said I was a lawyer." "You gave out business cards." "Business cards don't mean anything," he shrugged. "Let him investigate. What's he going to find? That I'm an old friend of your father's, that's true. That we work together, also true. He's bringing his own lawyer." Mike's stirring slowed. "That's more of a problem." "What do we do?" He was quiet for a while, looking out the window at the parking lot. When he spoke, his voice was different, harder. "There's something I haven't told you." I waited. "Your father didn't just count cards, not at the end." He turned back to me. "The last few years before he came home, things got complicated. We got involved with some people who weren't as clean as we were, moving money, holding things." "What kind of things?" "The kind of things people don't want traced." He met my eyes. "Some of that money your father hid, it wasn't all his. It belonged to other people. People who are still alive. People who might come looking." I felt the floor shift beneath me. "You're telling me this now?" "I'm telling you because it matters now. Jerry starts digging deep enough, he might find threads that lead somewhere bad. For both of us." "So what are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we need to move faster. Get what we can, get out clean." He leaned forward. "There's a safety deposit box in Cleveland your father told me about. He said it was his retirement fund. I think that's where the bulk of it is. We get that, we split it, we disappear." "And Jerry?" "Jerry gets nothing. Jerry's not our problem." I studied Mike's face. He'd helped me so far. He'd known my father for decades. But there was something in his eyes I didn't trust. A hunger that had nothing to do with old friendships or fair deals. "What's your cut again?" I asked. 20%, same as always." "And if I want to renegotiate?" His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because my father's dead and the old arrangement died with him. Because you're not doing me favors out of loyalty. You want this money as much as I do." I kept my voice steady. 30%, final offer." He laughed, but it was forced. "You're a tough negotiator." "I'm my father's daughter." The trip to Cleveland happened the following Tuesday. The safety deposit box was in a small bank downtown, the kind of place that catered to people who valued discretion. Mike had the key. I had the identification documents we'd found in my father's files, along with paperwork Mike had prepared that named me as co-holder of the box. The bank manager reviewed everything carefully, made some calls, and finally led us to a small private room. The box was larger than I expected, heavy. Mike opened it. Inside were stacks of bills, neatly rubber-banded, just like the ones I'd seen my father counting all those years ago. Hundreds mostly, some 50s, a lot of them. Also in the box, a small notebook, a leather pouch that clinked when Mike picked it up, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. "Well," Mike said softly, "there it is." I reached past him and picked up the notebook, flipped through it. Names, dates, numbers, none of it making sense to me. "Those are records," Mike said, watching me. "People your father dealt with, money he held for them." He reached for the notebook. "I should probably take that." I pulled it back. "Why?" "Because some of those people might still want their money back. And if anyone comes looking, it's better if there's no paper trail. Or you could use it to contact them yourself." His hand stopped mid-reach. "What?" "You know who these people are. You know what they're owed. If I give you this notebook, you could collect on my father's behalf and keep it all." I closed the notebook. "Is that why you're really here, Mike? Not for 20%, for all of it?" He dropped his hand slowly. "That's quite an accusation." "Tell me I'm wrong." He didn't. For a long moment, we just looked at each other across that metal table, with more cash between us than I'd ever seen in my life. Then Mike smiled. Your father warned me about you, said you saw everything, noticed everything just like him. He sat back. Okay, cards on the table. Yes, I want more than 20%. And yes, I know how to make that happen. But that doesn't mean we can't work together. Work together how? I know people who will buy this. He gestured at the contents of the box. Cash, no questions. The notebook, even more valuable. Those are debts people will pay to have disappear. We liquidate everything, split it down the middle. 50-50, more than fair. And if I refuse? Then I walk out of here and make a phone call. His voice stayed pleasant, but the threat was clear. Some of the names in that notebook, they don't like loose ends. They find out Harold Brennan's daughter has been sitting on their money. He shrugged. Ugly situation. I thought about the empty house on Maple Street, about Jerry coming back with his lawyer, about all the complications closing in from every direction. I need time to think, I said. You have until tomorrow. That night, I sat in a motel room outside Cleveland, with the contents of the safety deposit box spread across the bed. The money was real. I'd counted it, just under $400,000. The notebook was a map to other money, other obligations. I'd read enough to understand that some of it was legitimate, hidden accounts my father had maintained for himself. Some of it was something else entirely. The leather pouch contained gold coins, old ones, worth something, but I didn't know how much. And the envelope. I'd been saving it, afraid of what it might say, but there was no more time for fear. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, my father's careful handwriting. Rachel, if you're reading this, you found the box. Good girl. The money's yours, take it. The notebook, burn it. Don't try to collect what's owed. Don't try to contact anyone whose name is in there. Walk away clean. Mike will try to convince you otherwise. He's not a bad man, but he's not a good one either. He'll see opportunity where you should see danger. Don't trust him with more than you're willing to lose. You've been quiet your whole life. Watching, waiting. I know how much that cost you. Now it's time to stop waiting. Whatever you decide, know that I love you, and I'm sorry for all the secrets. Dad. I read it 3 times. Then I sat there, looking at the notebook, thinking about Mike's ultimatum. He wanted me to help him collect on debts that dangerous people owed my father. He thought I'd be motivated by greed, or maybe by fear. But my father had told me what to do. Burn it, walk away clean. And suddenly, I saw a different path. I called Jerry the next morning. Don't bring your lawyer, I said. Why not? Because I'm going to tell you the truth, all of it, but only you, and only if you come alone. A pause. I could hear him calculating. What's this about? It's about Dad. It's about the money he really had. It's about what Mike Castellano is trying to do. I took a breath. You were right, Uncle Jerry. There's more to this than I told you. I knew it. Come to the house tomorrow. Just you. I'll explain everything. The setup took careful timing. I called Mike next and told him I'd made my decision. 50-50, like he wanted. But I needed one more day to get the paperwork in order, the bank accounts, the storage location where I'd moved everything from Cleveland. Could we meet at my father's house tomorrow evening? He agreed. He thought he'd won. Then I spent the rest of the day preparing. They arrived within an hour of each other, Jerry in his SUV, Mike in his rented sedan. I watched them both pull up from the living room window. Jerry came to the door first. I let him in and positioned him in the kitchen, out of sight. Wait here, I told him. Listen to everything, don't come out until I say. What's going on? Just trust me. He didn't trust me. I could see it in his face. But he was curious enough, greedy enough to play along. Mike knocked 5 minutes later. I let him in, and we sat in the living room, the same chairs where we'd planned everything. You have the notebook, he asked. In a safe place. The money. Also safe. I folded my hands. But before we do this, I need to know something. All those people in the notebook, the ones who owe money, the ones who might come looking, are any of them still active? Mike frowned. Active. Dangerous. capable of causing problems. Most of them are dead or retired. A few, he shrugged. There are always a few. And if those few found out that you were collecting on my father's debts, using his records, what would they do? His expression shifted, just slightly. Why are you asking? Because I want to understand the risks. I leaned forward. Mike, you've been helpful, you knew my father, you've guided me through all of this. But you've also lied to me, about who you are, about what you want, and I need to know if I can trust you. You can trust me. Then, why didn't you tell me about the names in that notebook? Why didn't you warn me about the people who might come looking? I was protecting you. Or you were waiting for the right moment, until you had enough leverage. I stood up. There's something else I haven't told you. My Uncle Jerry, he's been investigating. He knows you're not a lawyer. He's found out about your past, your connections. He's talking to people. Mike's face went still. What kind of people? I don't know exactly. But he mentioned names, people from the old days, people who might be interested in knowing where Harold Brennan's money ended up. He's bluffing. Is he? I walked to the kitchen doorway. Why don't you ask him yourself? Jerry stepped out, phone in hand, recording. Mike's eyes went to the phone, then to Jerry, then back to me. I watched him calculate, the same way I'd watched my father calculate all those years, Sunday nights in the basement, always thinking 3 moves ahead. This is cute, Mike said. Really cute. But you think a recording changes anything. You think Jerry's going to scare me. I don't need to scare you. I picked up the notebook from where I'd hidden it behind a cushion. I just need you to leave. That notebook is worth. It's worth trouble for everyone whose name is in it, including you. I held it up. My father told me to burn it. He told me to walk away. And that's what I'm going to do. But before I burn it, I'm going to make copies. And I'm going to put those copies somewhere safe, somewhere that only opens if something happens to me. Mike's jaw tightened. You wouldn't. I learned from the best. I met his eyes. You want the money, take your 20%. That was the original deal. I've got cash in that bag by the door. $80,000. Count it if you want. He glanced at the bag. And the rest? The rest is mine. My father left it to me. You don't get to renegotiate because you think I'm an easy mark. I never said. You didn't have to. I stepped closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your money and leave. You're going to forget about that notebook and everyone in it, and you're never going to contact me again. Or what? Or I start making phone calls of my own. I nodded toward Jerry. My uncle's not the only one who knows how to find people, and those names in the notebook, some of them might be very interested to know that Mike Castellano has been trying to collect on Harold Brennan's debts. The silence stretched. Jerry was watching with his mouth slightly open. He didn't understand half of what was happening, but he knew enough to stay quiet. Mike's eyes moved from me to the bag to the notebook. I could see him weighing his options. He was older than me, stronger. He knew more about this world than I ever would. But he was also alone, and I wasn't. Fine, he said finally. His voice was flat. 80,000, we're square. We're square. He picked up the bag, checked the contents briefly, and headed for the door. At the threshold, he paused. Your father really was a smart man, he said, but you might be smarter. He left. Jerry and I stood in the empty living room, listening to Mike's car pull away. What just happened? Jerry asked. We made a deal. That guy, he was dangerous. You could see it. Yes. And the money, the notebook, is any of that real? I looked at my uncle. He was family. He'd spent 30 years taking from my father, never giving back. He'd showed up to pick through the remains before my father's body was cold. But he'd also come when I asked, and he'd stayed quiet when I needed him to. The money's real, I said. What's left of it, the notebook? I held it up. I'm going to burn it tonight like Dad wanted. And what about us, the estate? You got your share, all of you, signed documents saying so. That was exactly what it looked like. I walked past him toward the kitchen. You took everything Dad had, everything that was visible, furniture, appliances, dishes. You signed papers saying it was your fair inheritance. But there was more. You just said. I said the money was real. I didn't say any of it was yours. His face went red. That's not fair. Neither is 30 years of borrowing without repaying. Neither is showing up 2 days after your brother's funeral to go through his closets. I turned to face him. You got exactly what you deserved, all of you. I'll tell the others, about the money, about all of this. Go ahead, I shrugged. You'll look like you were part of a scheme to defraud an estate. You signed those documents. You took those items. If there's an investigation, you're the one holding stolen property. Jerry's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Dad always said you were quiet, he managed finally. He said you just watched, never made trouble. I was watching, I said, the whole time. 2 weeks later, I finished cleaning out the house. There wasn't much left. Mike and my relatives had taken almost everything. But I found a few things they'd missed. Photographs, letters, the old shoebox from my father's closet, still with his younger face smiling out from that casino photograph. I stood in the empty living room one last time. Late afternoon light came through the bare windows, making patterns on the dusty floor. The notebook was ashes in the backyard fire pit. The money was in accounts I controlled, scattered across 3 different banks. The gold coins were in a safety deposit box registered to a name I'd invented. My father had lived small to protect me. He'd let people take from him to keep the peace. I wasn't going to live like that. My phone buzzed. A text from Jerry, we need to talk. I deleted it. There would be more calls, more texts, family meetings and accusations and attempts to renegotiate. They'd keep coming, all of them, because that's who they were, grabbers. I locked the front door, dropped the key in my pocket, and walked to my car. Behind me, the house sat empty, waiting for whoever came next. I wasn't looking back.